Good evening. Good evening and welcome to tonight's candidate forum. My name is Donna Dicker and I'm co-president of the American Association of University Women. We're an organization dedicated to promoting the equality of all women and girls, lifelong education, and positive societal change. Our organization was chartered 25 years ago in 1981. We are here tonight to jointly present with the Morgan Hill Times the Candidates Forum. From the staff of the Times, we have Sheila Sanchez and Tony Burchins. The Times has been covering our community since 1894. It is with pleasure that I introduce to you tonight our moderator, Carol Holzgraf.
Thank you, Donna. In the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you that I am a longtime member of AAUW and a former city reporter for the Morgan Hill Times, a job which I miss since I've moved away from town. And I know 4 of the 7 candidates fairly well. Helping out tonight are fellow AAUW members, Carol O'Hare, Yvonne Duckett, and Peggy Thompson, who will circulate among the audience collecting cards with additional questions you would like us to ask. We won't have time to ask them all, but Joanne Reif here will sort through them and we will get as many of them as we possibly can. Laura Brenton, where are you, Laura, is our timer. So, now to business. The questions that I'm going to ask at the beginning were all gathered from the public. We've asked as many different people as we could find to give us questions. Each candidate will present a 2-minute statement telling us why he or she should get your vote. We're especially interested in how the candidate's experience qualifies them to tackle the surprisingly complex issues of city government and its wonderful budget. Before we start with the general 1-minute questions for everybody, I will ask Mr. Tate and Mr. Delisle, who are mayoral candidates, I will ask them a 2-minute question. At the end of the evening, each candidate will have 1 more minute to wrap up, clear up, or emphasize points once again. Our timer, Laura Brenton, will start off and we'll actually let everyone know when they have 15 seconds left by raising her yellow card.
You can raise it up this way, Laura.
Is that clear? Okay.
Great.
When the red card goes up, please complete your thought. Don't make us get out the hook. If you remember burlesque. Then we will begin a round of questions in which candidates have 2 minutes to respond. Every candidate will have the same question presented to them, though the one going first will be rotated, and they all drew numbers and they are sitting there. We'll start there and just, circulate around. So everybody has a chance to go first, which is very scary. Okay? Okay, Mr. Tate, would you give us your 2-minute explanation of why you are running for mayor and why everyone should vote for you?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody that's here for coming. I want to thank everybody that's watching for watching, and I want to thank the AAUW for hosting us, as well as the Morgan Hill Times. We have very few candidates forums this year, and this is one of the few, so it's a real opportunity for us, and we really appreciate getting that opportunity. I've lived in Morgan Hill for 29 years. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful city. I love it. I'm very deeply involved in it. I have served on the city council for the past 8 years. When I ran 8 years ago, I kind of ran saying, well, things aren't quite right here. We need to make them a little different. And you might hear that perspective from candidates that are not currently serving on the council. My perspective is a little bit different. My perspective is that things are going extremely well in Morgan Hill, and we have to keep them going. We're going in a very positive direction, and we need to keep it going in a very positive direction. I don't think we need any kind of wholesale changes. There are certain areas that I think most of the candidates have zeroed in on that need a little bit of tuning up, but no radical change in direction. I'm very proud of my involvement in Morgan Hill, and it goes way beyond my 8 years on the city council. I am very involved in the community, in service through Rotary Club. I'm involved with youth through the Youth Advisory Committee and the Interact clubs that we have in our high schools. I am involved in Leadership Morgan Hill. I'm involved in the Centennial Project. It's a total commitment to this community. And it kind of just highlighted to me as after I'd served 8 years on the council, what more can I bring to the community? And I thought I had a pretty good perspective to be able to lead the community as mayor, and I would appreciate your vote for that position. Thank you.
Dennis Delisle is also running for mayor.
I ditto with all the stuff that Steve said about having us on the forum, because that's the best way to know the candidates, see what's in their hearts and what they're talking about. I'm Dennis Delisle, been married to my wife Sharon for 38 years. We've lived in Morgan Hill 30 years. We raised our 2 kids here, and we have 3 of the prettiest grandchildren in Morgan Hill here. The grandparents will disagree with that, huh? And I've been 41 years in business for myself. We've been in sales, been in marketing, been in accounting. I have a degree in business and accounting. I've served on national and international boards. We represented $1 million budgets. I was chairman of Crown National Bank Board and Organization. I'm also currently on the South Valley Joint Planning Committee. I represent Morgan Hill. So being on boards and doing budgets and doing finances is not new to me. What I think is important about tonight is what are the differences between Steve and I? Because that's really where the mayoral is. What's the direction? I believe we need a new direction. I don't believe things are going very well. I'm a finance major. I've got a degree in accounting. And several of the things that I can see difference, and our words sound the same, but our philosophy are miles apart. On the RDA, I would not approve the RDA with the eminent domain. I don't want that in there. The RDA, I don't want a $333 million bond issue. We're having problems having a budget with 3 out of 4 years in a deficit. I can't imagine $250 million being committed by this city to be run by the board. On fiscal responsibility, I don't want any budget to ever start off with the expectation of going in a hole, that we're going to have to take money out of the general reserves, out of the general fund, out of the reserves. The reserves were designed for emergency, not for yearly planning. On fire and police, we are the highest cost per capita on recreation. We are the lowest percentage on police force per 1,000 of anybody in Santa Clara County. I think we need some changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Sellers is our only incumbent tonight. He has been on the city council for as many years as he will tell you.
Thank you, Carol. We have 1 minute, you said?
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Ooh.
That's everything.
Thank you. As Carol mentioned, I've been on the council 8 years, and I want to start off by thanking the chamber, or I mean, everybody in the chamber. I wanted to thank the AAUW and also the Morgan Hill Times. We have very few opportunities as council members to really convey our vision for the community, and so this is a unique opportunity, particularly for those of us who have been in office for some time. It's been an exciting 8 years. As Steve mentioned, when we first started on the city council, there were a lot of unanswered questions, or there was a lot of uneasiness within the community, within the city ranks. We had a lot of facilities that the public was demanding be built. We had a referendum shortly after we got on the council in which over 70% of the community said, we need more recreation facilities, we need more community facilities, we need more opportunities for our young people. We responded on the council, and in the last 8 years we've built an unprecedented number of community facilities, our community center, aquatic center, recreation center. More importantly, though, we strengthened our financial situation. We built up record reserves that were higher than we'd ever had before in the history of Morgan Hill, and we've used those reserves because what a great city does is they take the finances, and when times are good, we put some of those aside so that when times slow down, we have those funds. Businesses are run where everybody goes out and buys themselves nice cars when things are good, and you have layoffs when times are bad. That's not the way you run a good city. So we've taken a prudent approach, and even though we've added police officers, we have more officers now than we've ever had in our city's history. We need to add more, but we've done it in a way that is sustainable and that builds a great city, because that's really always been the vision of our council in these last 8 years, and the vision that I've had as a council member is to take a good city, which we've always been a good city when Susie and I were growing up here, and turn it into a great city so that we can turn it over to our 4 kids. So that's what I've tried to do the last 8 years, and with your continued support, I'd like to continue on the council to continue doing that good work on behalf of the citizens of Morgan Hill. Thank you.
I think I should explain why Greg Sellers has a different colored name tag than everyone else. The person making the name tags ran out of blue paper.
Darn it.
So she made an executive decision to place the red card in the only incumbent's position. It has nothing to do with our telling you how you should think about this particular candidate. Honest. Alex Kennett is our next candidate for City Council.
I hope in 4 years also to have the incumbent's name tag. I'm Alex Kennett. I'm a candidate for City Council, and thank you for allowing us to be here and putting this on. I feel I'm the candidate that has the best qualification from a broadest perspective. From a private standpoint, I've run my own company for 22 years, and for 10 years I've run other people's companies and helped them do so. I understand how businesses are run. I understand how things need to be paid for. I understand what it takes to meet a payroll. In the public area, I've helped with, I'm a retired military lieutenant colonel. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. I have a bachelor's in chemistry and a master's in history. In the volunteer area, I've worked with the city on the urban growth boundary. I've worked on the urban limit line. I'm the guy who heads up the committee that puts on the 4th of July. Show of hands, real quick. How many have volunteered for IDI for the 4th of July here? How about that? And at home, too. Put up your hands. And I'm also on the board of Joint Venture Silicon Valley. I also serve as your elected representative for the county, for the Open Space Authority. So I understand how the process works. It's not going to take me long to get going. All I need to know is what the secret handshake is, and I can get going. I've lived with the Brown Act for 6 years now. I agree sort of that we are going in the right direction. I believe there needs to be a little more attention to detail. I like to see things paid for as we go along, and I would like to see that as part of the planning process. I think some things were missed. I think it was all well meant. Steve and Greg and the others have done a wonderful job bringing Morgan Hill to the level it is now. But we are at a crossroads. So I believe with sound fiscal responsibility and management, both of the city and the RDA, we can do wonderful things to wonderful people, and I have some very specific ideas on how to do that in the various arenas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next City Council candidate is Marby Lee.
Thank you, Carol. I'd like to thank AAUW and the Morgan Hill Times for sponsoring this event tonight, and I appreciate their invitation to tonight's forum. My name is Marby Lee, and I'm a first-time candidate for City Council, and I've been a resident of Morgan Hill for 10 years. I'm running for office because I am concerned about the financial state of our city. Although we have a small surplus this year, we've run deficits for the past few years and have dipped into our reserves to cover the cost of recreation facilities that don't pay for themselves, rather than keeping these reserves for emergencies or using them to add police officers on the street. One of my opponents, Greg Sellers, disagrees. He claims we're in the best financial state of our history. The foremost responsibility of government is to protect its citizens by making wise public safety and infrastructure investments. When we subsidize recreation facilities that are not self-sustaining, instead of growing the police force to keep up with a growing population, we're putting recreation before public safety, and this is not wise stewardship of the people's tax dollars. The proposed sports complex on Condit Road is another example of the current council's misplaced emphasis. Both the maintenance and the total build-out costs are unknown, yet the council has decided to proceed. I contend that it is unwise to go ahead with a project when so little is known about the total cost. My opponent disagrees, asserting that it's okay to subsidize the sports complex from our already burdened general fund. My plan, if elected, is to use RDA funds to provide incentives for business to locate in Morgan Hill by, for example, offsetting impact fees, funding EIRs, or defraying the setup costs for planned unit developments. My goal is to use the RDA to reduce the barriers to new business investment rather than to build facilities that we can't afford to maintain. I thank everyone here and everyone watching for taking the time to get involved, and I'd appreciate your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Our fourth candidate for City Council is Al Tervalon.
Good evening. I'd like to also thank Carol and the Times and the AAUW and the viewing audience for putting on the forum. It's always great to be able to see everybody act and react to the same set of questions together. I've been a Morgan Hill resident for 7 years, bought a house 6 years ago, decided to move here because I love the community, I love the small town feel of it, I love the access to green space. I just like it here, as I mentioned many of you do. Professionally, I've got a Bachelor in Engineering degree from MIT, and I've been a high-tech engineer and engineering manager for the last 20 years. In that capacity, I've got a lot of experience at working complicated problems like how do you build 5 million disk drives a month? Big money, complicated problems, generally that need to be done in a month or two. So one of the beautiful things about the council to me is you have a little bit of time to think. Why do I want to be councilor and why do I want your vote? I think with me you get something a little bit outside of the standard process. You get a clear thinker, you get a collaborative problem solver, you get a good listener, and you get someone who's willing to go outside the lines a little bit and be creative in the problem solving. Most problems I've encountered over my life and my career have more than one right answer. We have 30-odd thousand people in town who have the right answer to their specific problem. The job of the councilor is to balance and negotiate that to the collective right answer for the town. And so I think the negotiation skills and the collaborative efforts are really important to the councilor you're going to elect. You're going to hear a lot of specific thoughts tonight from me and others. Not so much from me, though, because I'm not sure that we have specific answers to a soundbite kind of question. Because all the questions are interrelated. They're all interrelated to the budget. Do we have enough money to pay for all the things we want to do together? And they're all interrelated to how much time it's going to take us and what kind of energy it's going to take to do it. So I don't know that you can do a soundbite kind of question and answer session, but I do want you to pay attention to how the candidates react, how they feel, how they think, how they process information, and how we all act. Because in the end, you're going to vote for three of us who you trust to handle the problems and handle the situations and listen to the situations and go do the research. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Chris Borrello is our fifth council candidate.
I'd like to start off by thanking everyone for attending the event as well. And I also like to say hello to everybody on TV, because I've never been on TV, which is pretty exciting. As you guys are aware, my name is Chris Borrello, and I do want to be your next city councilman. That's why I'm sitting up here. I graduated from San Jose University in 2004 with a major in political science, and I have a minor in urban and regional planning. Since 1945, my family has lived and farmed in Morgan Hill. Many have said that we have roots in this town, metaphorically and literally. Morgan Hill is a town that I've always called home, and I'm very excited at the opportunity to lead Morgan Hill into the future. Tonight, as at previous debates, you're going to be listening to this distinguished panel of 7 candidates, including me. Each of the 7 of us represent a different sector of the community and have different goals that we would like to accomplish while in office. There's a quote from Lord Chesterfield: "Common sense is the best sense I know of." Lord Chesterfield hit the nail on the head with this quote. Unfortunately, in my opinion, our current city council has failed to live by his wisdom. Our council has continued to choose amenities over necessities. Why have they continued to put public safety second to recreational activities? Why have they authorized the construction of new capital projects that are in the red? Why have they allowed our city to sprawl in every direction and failed to develop a specific plan for downtown Morgan Hill? As your next city councilman, I will put to use the advice of Lord Chesterfield. I will vote, behave, and consider new ideas with a common sense approach. These are the promises I'm making you today, and we'll live by them in the future. I'd also like to say that we can't allow the city council to simply say that the people mandated the construction of these new projects. The job of the city council is to make difficult decisions which are not always in line with public opinion. A good councilman is a councilman who ethically governs, has a high level of integrity, and is able to make difficult decisions and take responsibility for his or her actions. I'm ready for city council because I believe I can impact change while in office. As a voter, you need to ask yourself a question. Are you ready for the next generation of leadership? I am, and I hope you guys are with me. Thank you.
Thank you all. If the council members or council candidates will forgive us for 4 minutes and 10 seconds, I would like to ask questions of our two mayoral candidates. And let us start with Mr. Delisle because Mr. Tate got to go first last time. We don't want any fights here. You have 2 minutes, although you don't have to take it all, but you have 2 minutes. Please tell us how you view the job of mayor. How much time does it take? How is it different from being a council member? What are the most important contacts a mayor must make? How would you make the position your own? As you know, since we've had elected mayors, we've had one person in that job. So it's time. This is going to be a new experience for all of us. So, Mr. Delisle.
I view the mayor's position as kind of the daddy for the city. Somebody has to be the person that makes the tough decisions, as Chris was talking about. And if I'm walking, meeting people and seeing where they live and how they live and what they live, you got to have a heart for people. All of us that are running for city council and all of you that have served, many times it's a thankless job because you can never please all the people all the time. And you can't fool all the people all the time. And so there gets to a certain point where you have to make choices, and they're tough choices. And some people, they barely can get out of their home in a wheelchair, and other people are living in palaces and mansions here and huge houses. But we're all human. We all have needs. We all have desires. We all have things we want to accomplish. I can guarantee all the people up on the stage have a heart for Morgan Hill. I don't think any of the candidates would doubt their sincerity on doing what's best for Morgan Hill, because we all have a heart for the city. It's a great city. And so our goal is to try to be the key person. I know that I only have one vote as mayor, but I know that you have to have a vision for where the city's going. And you have to have, most of all, the heart for the people of what we are doing. The job I don't think scares me at all, but the responsibility does. The responsibility of being the mayor of the city of Morgan Hill, where you have to represent every type of person, every age group, every background, every income, and do it fairly and do it honestly. That's an awesome responsibility. I've seen it in our business ventures. We've been in business for 41 years. I've never had anybody that's been financially hurt by us. There's never been anybody that can say, well, the experience with being with the Lyles has hurt them. It's always benefited them. And I think when you run a city, you have to try to do that for most people. You have to say, what can I do to help you? What's within reason? And when it's time to make a decision, it stops with the 5 city councilmen. You got to make the decision. If we're doing good, elect us again. If we're not, bring in a new team. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I need to repeat the questions?
No, you don't.
I don't? Okay, go.
Well, you may if you'd like.
It's up to you.
Okay. One thing the mayor is 1/5 or 20% of a city council, and that has to be foremost in the mind of the individual that's mayor. The mayor does have something that Alex has right now, the gavel. And that is really the weight that the mayor does have that differentiates him from the rest of the city council. You only have 1 vote out of 5 votes. You're not going to get a decision made because you're the mayor. You have to have a plurality of the council to make this decision. But you can make the agenda go the way you want it to go. You can run the meeting. You can influence things that way. We're going to be looking at agendas if we have this position in terms of making them a little bit more efficient. We're looking at ways of making the meetings more efficient. Another area that the mayor has a little bit more influence is in terms of outside assignments. This does not mean that the mayor takes all outside assignments, but I think we can do a very good job with 5 city council members of getting everybody in the most optimum position in terms of dealing with our neighbors, dealing with the other institutions within our city that we have to deal with, and so forth. I do have a lot of outside, with the experience I've had with 8 years on the council, I do have a lot of outside contacts. I know most of the other incumbent city council people and council and county staff and so forth. So that's an advantage, and we try to take not just advantage of my contacts, but the rest of the contacts on the council. So I think, always understanding that you're not the guy that's running the show. You're really just 20% of that in terms of decision-making, you use the influence that you have with the gavel in terms of running the meetings, agendizing the meetings, and making the outside and committee assignments, our commissions as well, as the mayor to optimize the operation of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, we will start the general round of 1-minute questions. Everybody gets to answer the same thing. And since Mr. Tate answered the last question, let us start with Mr. Borrello. Oh, yes, we'll start with my favorite subject here, growth control. Measure C, formerly known as Measure P, formerly known as Measure E, I believe. Please tell us, excuse my back to you.
That's fine.
It's either looking at you or talking to the microphone. Please tell us what you think it is and why it exists. Comment on possible tweaking the measure to allow for more residential growth downtown, which allows the implementation of the downtown plan. And under the same heading, please tell us what your vision for growth in Morgan Hill is. 1 minute.
Took that long to ask the question.
Sorry, okay.
All right, as we all probably pretty much are aware, Measure C is our growth control. That was a voter-approved initiative. It's gone through 3 different phases, and now we're about to work on Measure F to focus the downtown. I think Measure C has been an excellent product for Morgan Hill. It's basically allowed us to limit our growth so they can preserve our small town identity in Morgan Hill. It's an excellent tool to maintain the type of lifestyle that we enjoy today. There is a number of items that I personally would like to tweak on the Measure C, specifically in the criteria. Measure C, you need to give affordable housing in order to offset the extreme high costs in Morgan Hill to purchase a home, and that's how the current program works. What I would advocate is tweaking that just a little bit more and inputting a green type a green type of building into the city. And what I would focus on to make the houses more affordable would be to do like solar panels, make them more environmentally friendly. So if we do that, we can lower the cost of actually maintaining your house. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We could be more green. We can make it cheaper for people to live in Morgan Hill, and your house payments will be lower. And we'll be a much healthier city, and we'll be a role model for all other cities that we can do a green building, they can do a green building. So I think we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tervalon, you're up.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Measure C is, as he said, our growth limitation ordinance, and it's one of the reasons I moved to town. It's going to prevent sprawl, and it has done so for a lot of years. The beauty of the measure to me is that it has survived several voter tweaks, and it has proven to be a living measure. It continues to be affirmed by the community as is the way we want to grow. Measure F, I fully support. I think our downtown, in order to grow and be a little more vibrant, needs to have a few more residents and some more foot traffic. Measure F, as I understand it, doesn't add new units, but it simply moves them up in the schedule. I think that's a great idea because you're going to need to get some critical mass downtown. In terms of vision for the future of the city, I guess I haven't thought about that greatly because it seems like there's a lot of things to do today. So I guess that's it for now.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
I think Measure C has served us well. It has had tweaks over the years, and I think as the city continues to change and grow, it will probably continue to need to be tweaked. As far as Measure F and units downtown, I am of the understanding that there are 100 units, and I think to get the downtown going, that's a good idea as long as it's included in the 250 that Measure C has. My only concern is where are we going to put 100 units downtown? It depends on where it's defined, and that is my big concern. We're going to need more parking if we have new units downtown where people are living and working and going to shops there. So I think we have to be really careful when we're planning it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kennett?
Thank you. Because there's only a minute, I agree with essentially parts of what everyone said. And specifically, I invite you to visit my website and read the... Thank you. Visit my website and read what I've written is a tour of Morgan Hill in 2020, if you want to know what I feel about growth in Morgan Hill. I wrote this back in June. I do feel that downtown needs to be our version of Santana Row, to have plenty of living space there, to have the critical mass needed to make it successful from a from a commercial standpoint. We need to balance our parks and systems and connect them and make it a green, comfortable community, where if you don't want to live in a consolidated area such as downtown, there's still plenty of room for you in the rest of Morgan Hill without having to buy somebody's 40 acres just to grow a new neighborhood. I'm all for infill, and I do like the way Measure C has been working.
Thank you. Mr. Sellers.
I'm going to have to talk real fast on this one, so I apologize in advance. When I was the age of a lot of these high school students here, I was at Live Oak High School, and we were on double session, so I got to deal with growth control and understand when we grow too fast. 15 years later, Susie and I went to go buy our first home, and we experienced the limited opportunities for young families to buy new houses in Morgan Hill. So we clearly understand the issue. I'm thrilled this evening that everyone up here has stated support for Measure F, because I wrote it, and work with the council to put it on the ballot this fall, because we need more housing downtown. We need the right kind of housing. It'll bring both empty nesters, folks who want to have a smaller unit but want to live downtown, into our downtown community. It'll also bring first-time home buyers, young professionals, and young families. And that's exciting to me, someone who's been involved and dedicated to downtown for the last 15 years and is a resident of downtown and a business owner who has my office downtown. I want to continue along those paths, continue that leadership on growth control in the next 4 years if I'm reelected, and look forward to working with my colleagues on the council to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Delisle.
Yes, I'm for reevaluating Measure C. Live Oak and Sobrato High School graduate 350 kids every year. And if they wanted to live in Morgan Hill, there's not 350 houses they can buy and live in. So I understand the Measure C. I understand all the stuff that we're going through that. But anytime you set up an artificial deterrent, what you're doing is you're taking away the supply and demand. And what you're doing is artificially bumping up the prices of the houses in Morgan Hill because you have more demand and less supply. I believe there's a comprehensive way that you can increase the number, keep the green area, keep the growth area down, go up, cut the number of units, but still take care of people who want to move here, and without artificially bumping up the price. So it's a delicate situation, but I think there is time that we have to address that, because the dynamics are changing. People are working out of their homes today. People are running businesses out of the internet. There's a whole bunch of dynamics that weren't here 25 years ago that we have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tate.
Okay, I chaired the committee that did the update of Measure P to Measure C. At the same time, I was the vice chair of the committee on the downtown plan, so I'm very intimately familiar with how we updated those and put them together. We tried to make them work very well together. We knew what each other were doing, but when we got done, the people that live downtown, the people that work downtown, the people that have to make the downtown plan really come alive and happen, told us that they needed a few more units, thus Measure F. And it's very, very nice to see that we can very easily put something on the ballot, and we can fix little problems that occur with our growth control. I do not have a 1-minute vision for downtown or for Morgan Hill, but my website, www.meritate.org, has both of those questions. What's your vision for Morgan Hill? What's your vision for downtown? And I refer you to that website also to see. But I see a very, very vibrant, vital downtown with people living there, shopping there, doing their thing there, and it's just going to be golden. It's great now. It's going to be better. Thank you.
Thank you all. Since several people have mentioned this, most, if not all, of our candidates have their own websites. You can, I'm sure, Google them or use your search engine. But another way of finding information that is unbiased, generally, about candidates and election is to go to the League of Women Voters website, which is www.smartvoter.org. And it tells you just about anything you want to know. Most of our, in fact, all of our candidates have questions and answers there and links to their websites if they have one. So check it out. It's a valuable tool, and it's free. Okay, let us start our next question with Mr. Tervalan.
Okay.
Our next question is our old favorite, the Redevelopment Agency. The agency's life is going to come to an end soon, since it is voted for a finite period and amount of money, more than period. Should it be extended? If so, should it be extended by the council, or should the decision be made by the voters? How should the money be used for city facilities, for improving infrastructure, fixing downtown flooding, public works. What about the trade-off with paying for city services and/or subsidizing facilities that don't yet pay for themselves? Lots of things, pick and choose, answer whichever you like in your 1 minute.
In my 1 minute. I'm in favor of the RDA in principle. I think it's a great tool for diverting the appropriate, we can debate appropriate, amount of money to development projects. As such, I do not think it should be used for filling budget gaps. I do think it should be used for incenting business projects, bringing businesses, preferably small businesses, into town in coordination with the master plan. I also think we can use the RDA to grow facilities that we want to have in town. You've heard it a couple of times, athletic facilities and such. Figuring out what's the right budget for those facilities, I think it's probably outside of the scope of the RDA, but it is in the scope of the people who approve making the RDA happen. We want those things to be not cash drains on the city. RDA should not have the power of eminent domain, particularly private property to private property. That's just outright theft. We should not grant that to anybody. That's just a failure to negotiate. But I am in favor of extending it.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
My thoughts are that the RDA could be a source of funds to provide incentives for businesses that come to Morgan Hill by offsetting impact fees, helping to pay for EIRs, defraying the cost of planned unit developments. Furthermore, the success of the RDA to the president, the project that's undertaken, I think need to be studied before we move forward. I don't think redevelopment agency funds should be used to construct capital projects that rely on general fund money for maintenance and operations. I think if we use RDA money to help new businesses coming to town to defray some of the costs I mentioned, I think it's worth extension. I think if we're going to keep building projects that don't pay for themselves and are a drain on the general fund, I don't think I would extend it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kennett?
Just spent 6 years as the chairman of the Economic Development Committee for the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce, and I firmly believe in the RDA. I have questioned the way it's been managed, but the process is a good one. I think a few more questions need to be asked. It needs to be better planned, some of its usages. As far as the voters participating in the extension of the RDA, I think the elected people can do that. I would like to see the voters have a little more participation in how the RDA is used, however, and then that can be easily done by referendums and other things. The RDAs would give us a whole lot more money that would have been ours anyway for us to use specifically, rather than relying strictly on our tax base. So it can be a good tool, but it needs to be managed properly.
Thank you. Mr. Sellers?
Thank you. Yes, I do strongly support extending the RDA for several, but as a smaller redevelopment agency. And the way we proposed it for next year, we'll be bringing back nearly $1 million a year into our general fund by reducing the size of the RDA. And I support using those funds, that the extension, primarily for economic development and for promoting continuing our downtown renaissance. I think the right way to do that, and the way that we have done that, is not to just throw money at businesses the way some people have proposed. The way to do that is to work with the market, to understand the market here in Morgan Hill, and to do what we can to make that market stronger for those businesses that we do want to be here. So we've done that in a lot of ways. We didn't give a dime to Trader Joe's, but they're here because they understood our market. We helped them understand that. We've done that with a lot of other businesses as well, and we've had incredible success, not only in bringing businesses to town, but in bringing the right businesses that make sense for Morgan Hill, that enhance our quality of life and don't just bring tax dollars, but make Morgan Hill a better community. That's what I want to do with 4 more years on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. You forgot the main reason why Trader Joe's is coming. We begged.
We begged. But they wouldn't have come if it wasn't good business. You're right.
My wife loves you.
Mr. Delisle.
I believe in extending the RDA also, but also I believe in changing the direction of that. One of the things we need to do in the city is have income generation. Not just economic growth, but the income generation, where all of a sudden the city's making money on some of the assets that we have. And I'm not sure why the or the RDA board is the same as the city council board. I'd look at separating those two, because very few people build multi-million-dollar structures. And until you've built a multi-million-dollar structure, you really don't understand what goes into building those, and how do you pay for those, and how do you manage those. It's a very complicated concept to make sure that they're profitable, run well, run efficient. And a lot of people just don't have that expertise. Or if we brought in some people that have expertise and set up a separate board running that, I think we'd have better decisions on how we use the RDA. But I think it should be maintained and should be used for a different perspective on income generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate.
I have about a 1 hour answer to this
Yes,
question.
I know,
but
I'm
only have 1
sorry.
minute.
1/60th.
Yes, the RDA. Parking, look at parking. Let's start with parking. That's a very obvious reason. We have this renaissance going on in downtown, and yet we are taking away parking on both 3rd Street and Depot Street, and we know that we're going to have to do something about that. So, yeah, we have to extend the redevelopment agency if we ever want to have any chance of bringing that downtown dream alive. And that's the most obvious example of the reason. I totally agree that we have gotten the mandate that we got back in 98 and 99 to build facilities. We built those facilities, and we should not be building additional facilities. We've gotten the facilities that have been asked for. We didn't get quite enough of the outdoor playing fields that we wanted, but let's not spend more money on that now. Let's hold off on that and really spend the money on attracting business and getting our downtown the way we want it. And I wish I could say more, but I'm done.
Check out your website.
Hey, the rest of us too. Take care, Carol. Talk about all of our websites. All of our
Of
websites.
course, I already said that. Think of Jerry Brown with his 1-800 number.
This isn't taking my time, right?
No,
I'm just kidding.
that would not be fair. Mr. Borello, it's
All right.
yours.
Statistically, the majority of RDAs are ran by the city council, and I believe that's a necessary evil because the decisions that the council's making on the RDA is directly going to affect the city budget for the next year. Unfortunately, we haven't used it as well. I think the council needs to be a little bit more concerned about the costs associated with building these projects and maintaining them. I would be all for extending the RDA. I think it's an excellent way to attract businesses downtown. The thing I think we should direct some of the money away from capital improvements, stop doing it completely, and the deal with the city downtown. We've heard that there's a renaissance going on, and I don't really believe there's a renaissance downtown. I've been here my whole entire life, and it's better, but it's not what it should be. I believe we need to develop a specific plan, use the RDA, a specific plan for downtown Morgan Hill, and use the RDA funds to realize that specific plan. Let's see. Also, if we're going to use RDA funds to build something that's going to cost money, then we need to, at the same exact time, go, listen, this is going to cost me $500,000 a year. How am I going to bring in an extra $500,000 a year into the city? And that's how I would implement the RDA. Thank you. I'm Italian, I use my hands. All right.
Our next question will start with Ms. Lee. Let's tackle the downtown. Downtown businesses continue to struggle. How specifically do you propose to improve the business climate downtown? What is the downtown plan? Should the city consider the impact on downtown businesses when it offers incentive to businesses located along the freeway? And anything else you care to throw in your 60 seconds?
Well, I think the key to getting downtown to a place where I think everybody wants it to be is to try and attract businesses to this town that are unique to the area, that we don't have in Morgan Hill already, that we don't have in Gilroy, that we don't have in South San Jose. To take something that's already in those areas and bring it here, what's the attraction for anybody else? We can go to Gilroy, we can go to South San Jose if they live there. What we need to do are bring things that are unique, that people say, wow, Morgan Hill's got this, let's go there. And then provide them with many businesses like that that will attract people, will keep them walking around on the streets later in the day, into the evening, keep the businesses open later at night so we have a thriving downtown with pedestrians walking around, having dinner, eating, spending their money. We need to bring businesses in town that keep people roaming around downtown and spending their money to help bring more money into the general fund. Thank you.
Mr. Kennett.
Right now, there's 7 projects going on in the downtown area, and none of them are actually related to each other. What we need to do is plan downtown. We first of all need to define where downtown is. Did you know that there's 3 different definitions of downtown by the city itself? Define downtown, plan downtown, make downtown into, as you would, a shopping center. That way it doesn't compete with the peripheral areas and other shopping centers, and thus we have a balanced economy and economic income from the rest of the city. let there be 4- and 5-story buildings, the top 2 stories having residence. Thus, we have the critical mass to keep the shops open below. 2nd-story offices, 1st story, everything from all the businesses that you can't find anywhere else, our version of Los Gatos, if you will, to make Morgan Hill the unique place that we'd all deserve.
Mr. Sellers.
Thank you, Carol. Well, I want to first somewhat dispute the question because businesses are not struggling in downtown. If you go to the business, we've had more new restaurant openings in the last year than we've ever had. We have a broader diversity of restaurants, a broader diversity of new clothing options. The way to make downtown successful is not to bring businesses in. It's not the city's job to bring businesses in. It's the city's job to help the market succeed. When you try to prop up businesses that shouldn't be there, then they don't succeed and we don't succeed. So the key is to work with the market, and we've done that successfully. In addition, here's what we're going to see in the next 24 to 36 months. We're going to see more housing built in downtown than we've ever had in our history. We're going to see more new businesses come into our downtown to enhance the already existing business supply. We're going to see stronger businesses that currently exist and expansions of those businesses. And we're going to see a much broader infrastructure, including, as Steve mentioned earlier, new parking structures, new lighting and other things that will enhance the quality of life. So that's the vision that we've already articulated and that I'm looking forward to implementing. It's already in our downtown plan. It's not what we ought to be doing now is not studying it more. We need to implement the plan that's already in place, and that's what I'll be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. To clarify, the struggling part, this perception is not my own. It came from a couple of business owners when we trolled for questions.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Delisle.
Yeah, my parents live in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and if you ever seen Lake Havasu, it's a desert. McCollum helicopter and chainsaws was out there until he had the idea of buying the London Bridge and bringing it over here brick by brick, and then making the Colorado River go under the London Bridge, and then all of a sudden Lake Havasu is a thriving population. It's going great. We need something like a London Bridge in downtown Morgan Hill. Not the bridge, okay, but some type of a unique attraction that says, you ought to see Morgan Hill. Man, they have got such and such. And I said, well, what's your idea on that? You'll have to wait until I'm mayor to get that idea. But, but there is some way to attract people to downtown, come in, and it's an experience that they go, wow, you have to come down and see what they've done to Morgan Hill. And then all of a sudden you bring in trade, you bring in people, you bring in sales, you bring in numbers, and the vitality of the city goes up because you got activity. And if you got activity, you got numbers.
If any of the audience members has an idea of what the non-bridge should be, grab a card and send it up. Mr. Tate.
Yeah, we do have a downtown plan. As I said earlier, I was co-chair and Greg was chair of that committee that put together a downtown plan. We have started executing on that plan. You might have noticed that Depot Street is torn up. 3rd Street will be torn up next. But we've also gone through a Measure C competition that was dedicated to the downtown. The things that are in the downtown plan are not overnight kind of things. There aren't overnight magic answer kinds of things that are going to appear and then all of a sudden the vitality is going to be there. It's going to take a few years. We have to get the residential going and get that started. It is all in the downtown plan. We're going to the next phase of the downtown plan. I believe the Planning Commission had a hearing last week in terms of how they're going to fulfill more of the downtown plan, putting details behind it. So I think we have the plan. We need to execute the plan. It's going to take several years, but I see everything already going in the right direction. I think Greg's absolutely right that we can't dictate what businesses come in here, but we have to create the environment from the city standpoint where they really want to come here. So we need to do that.
Mr. Borello.
Well, I'm really excited about downtown. That's one of the main areas that I like to focus on when I get elected. I think right now what we have is we have a plan and we have a vision. We don't have a specific plan that's incorporated into our general plan, and that holds a lot more clout to make sure things get done. It needs to be incorporated into our general plan, so we need a specific plan. Measure F is going to extremely help downtown Morgan Hill to get the housing down there. One thing I keep hearing when we're listening to everybody is attracting unique businesses. Listen, businesses are going to locate wherever they think they're going to make the most money. And we're talking about, we don't want everything that Gilroy or San Jose has. Those types of businesses aren't going to be located downtown anyways. The stuff that Gilroy and San Jose has is going to be located off the freeway. So there's $90 million a year that we lose in sales tax leakage. So if we could tap into some of that, who cares if Gilroy has it? Is there somewhere you can go buy a calculator or a nice pair of shoes? There's nowhere like that in town. Also, the way to make Morgan Hill successful, the downtown, is for something for people to do. Every time I go out and talk to people, you know what they tell me? There's nothing to do in Morgan Hill. There's nowhere to go. I invite friends over to our house. There's nothing for us to do. There's nothing for anyone to do. So what I want to do is make downtown a place to be, a fun place to hang out, and have something that's open past 9:30, 10 o'clock. So.
That's after my bedtime.
Mr. Tervalon.
I'm fired up. Okay.
All right, we need to bottle Chris's energy. I'm from the East Coast. We have public transportation out there. We don't seem to have it in a great deal out here. To me, parking goes underground. The need for paving parking lots is silly. Parking goes underground. What do we do downtown to make it kind of exciting? We need more people, of course. People talk about unique versus standard. Chris took a little bit of my thunder. How many people brushed their teeth today? Ate food? Wore clothes? All of those things need to happen anyway. The sales tax dollars to Gilroy or San Jose belong here, so we need to have some of those stable businesses. In terms of things to do downtown, I absolutely agree, but I'd like to spread it out some. The fact that the Grenada is not a movie theater is really annoying to me. Pool halls, arcades, daycare places, places for kids to play, more park benches and tables on the street for people to just sit and congregate to, a music club or two for some live music, fun stuff to get people to go downtown, because when they do that, they're going to eat dinner too.
Thank you. Well, shall we tackle eminent domain?
Don't need a full minute for that.
In the context of Morgan Hill, and we're going to be starting with Mr. Kennett. In the context of our dear city, what do you think of eminent domain? Give us your thoughts on using the process for public use only, or to potentially, this is new apparently, to include outside developers. When should it be used? Only on businesses? What about public or private homeowners? And what's the effect likely to be on downtown property values?
No. What can I do with the rest of my minute? Eminent domain.
Never?
No. Not as far as the RDA is concerned. Eminent domain, we in the Open Space Authority have use of it. We've never used eminent domain. We've always gone with a willing buyer, willing seller, and I feel that's the way it needs to be. I don't believe the city or any public agency needs to be in the private development business. Let the market take care of itself. The only use for a municipality to use eminent domain where it would involve very clearly defined public safety. For instance, a strip of land needed for a turning lane or something that's very specific. But eminent domain as a means of doing business is absolutely against it.
Okay. Mr. Sellers.
Thank you, Carol. To save everybody clapping for all of us, nobody up here supports eminent domain for the RDA, as we heard in our extension on Thursday. But the key is who best can help us to achieve our community's goals, what we all agree to. So we hear everybody talking about wanting to make improvements in downtown, but we have key property owners that have to come together with the community, with our city, and understand our vision and move forward as private property owners. So we have, the challenge is, the easy thing is to rail against RDA, against eminent domain. The hard thing is to articulate how we're going to create a great community without using some of those tools that cities have traditionally relied on. Since none of us support eminent domain, the challenge then becomes, okay, who best up here can work with those property owners, who's proven their leadership in doing that? And I would say that you look at the track record of Steve and I, and you can see that we've done that, and I think we'll continue to do that as we move forward on the City Council in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Mr. Delisle.
Yeah, I was sitting at a city council meeting where both Greg and Steve said they wanted eminent domain as part of their tool bag. They have the availability to use. And my point is, I don't want it in the tool bag. Anytime the government can coerce or force or take away private property rights, you have just negated the Constitution. You have just made us all slaves. Even if the property doesn't fit what exactly the city wants to do, you change the plan. You figure, okay, this person doesn't want to sell their property, okay, we don't buy it. You can't force them to do it. You have to go out and say, okay, let's do a plan B. In business, I've always had a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Would I like plan A to work? Sure. Does it always work? No. So you go to plan B. preserving individual rights protects the freedom of America. And to take that away, I don't, any case. I can see for a firehouse, I can see for a police station, I can see for roadways, for public safety, but just because you think it's a better idea, absolutely not.
Mr. Tate?
I don't know what city council meeting Mr. Delisle was at. I did talk about what would be nice in terms of having eminent domain, in terms of getting a property owner to return a phone call. But I made that statement as part of my explanation of why I was not going to support eminent domain. So I don't know where that came from. I do not. We've gotten along fine without eminent domain in the redevelopment agency, and we're fine going forward. I do think that we have the kind of leadership that can negotiate and come to the right kind of conclusions with property owners. We have not used eminent domain in the last 8 years outside of or inside of the RDA. We will need it for some of the safety kinds of issues that Alex talked about in terms of getting just small pieces of property and so forth, but that is outside of the RDA.
Thank you. Mr. Borello?
I think this goes back to my opening, a common sense approach to leadership. If you came up to me and said, I'm taking your property, I'm going to do everything I can to let you have it just out of spite. So we need to work with people, you know, and work with them. So instead of coming in with my big stick, saying, I'm going to take it, approach them. Make it reasonable, make it worthwhile for them. The way to get people to do things you want is to get what they want. You'll be more successful in life if you get more people what they want. You'll get whatever you want. That's just how it boils down to. I think it's a ridiculous notion to implement eminent domain. We personally went through it on our ranch a couple years ago when we lost like 10 acres. It's ridiculous. The way to get people to develop downtown specifically, if that's what we're going to talk about, that's where people want to use the eminent domain, is to offer them, change their zoning, will add value to their property. So if we make their property more marketable, they're not going to want to keep onto it and it's undervalued use. So if we change the zoning for people, make their property more valuable through zoning, what they'll do is they'll go ahead and sell it, which is what we want anyways, and they'll go ahead and build the project that we're going after because we'll make the zoning fit the project. So it's common sense.
Mr. Tervalan?
Let's see. I mentioned earlier eminent domain is theft. Asimov is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a line in 1941, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. Eminent domain being a most violent act that a government can impose on a citizen. And if we're going to take private property for private or public use, that means that all of you don't really own your homes. And that's a problem to me. So I don't believe eminent domain has a use in government. To me, it's just a failure to negotiate. You've heard a couple people talk about needing it for safety. The growth for the safety should be in the general plan. And if you bought a house where there's going to be a fire station, you know that. So that shouldn't be a surprise to you when the city grows and it's time to build that. Regarding owners that don't want to talk to you, I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old kids. They don't always want to talk to me either. They sit down and they cry, they have a little tantrum. I tell them crime doesn't solve your problem. We either need to engage somehow, or we'll embarrass them a little bit, or we'll wait them out and they'll come talk to us eventually, because not talking about it is a 2-year-old solution. Anybody who's owning a building in here can't act like a 2-year-old and be part of our town, and we can't let that happen.
Ms. Lee?
Thank you. I'm against eminent domain. It takes away your property rights, and it makes, makes subjective the decision of what's an appropriate use of eminent domain. And I believe it was the October 4th meeting that on the last item on the agenda, the council discussed in what sense they would decide to use eminent domain for the redevelopment agency. There were not many people here, and the way it was looking in my eyes, they were leaning towards adding it as one of their powers. Now, I know Steve has come out now saying that he wouldn't use that, but some of the other council was advocating the use of eminent domain for the extension on the RDA. Thank you. And I wouldn't do it.
Okay. Sooner or later, everything comes down to money. About the city finances. And this is another question that I received from several people in town. So here we go. Morgan Hill recently faced a $1 million budget shortfall, but was saved from making difficult decisions in large part, I understand, by rising gas prices that spiked tax revenue. Other than the trite, I'd go through the budget line by line looking for places to cut response, how specifically would you close next year's budget gap if we had one? What hard choices would you be prepared to make? We're starting with Greg. It's a rotation, so it's the luck of the draw.
No, that's fine, because it's an opportunity to kind of reply to several comments that have been made earlier this evening. I would start off by pointing out that as a council, we've done, not only have we had record reserves, and we've made appropriate use of those when times have been lean, but more importantly, we've instituted a 5-year plan. So I can tell you that we're not going to have shortfalls, because we've already dealt with those, and we've already shown clearly how we're going to deal with those. The first thing we did, we've made $1 million in cuts, so that we cut back on services that we we liked and that weren't essential. Second thing we did, we pointed out that public safety was our top priority. Everybody's going to say that, but it's a different thing to actually institute that. And so we've added to our police force, and we've kept our fire department strong. And the third thing is, a great community doesn't just have police and fire. A great community has parks, a great community has recreation services. We have shown a long-term plan for instituting recreation programming, and if we have to cut back on some of that when times are lean, that's appropriate. But a great city has recreation services, and I would say that if somebody up here says that they don't know how they can have recreation and police, then you should leave the job to those of us who do. Thank you.
Before we have to get out the switch out there, we do have one suggestion for the unbridged, so keep them coming. Mr. Delisle.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I also understand that we can't water our parks because there's not enough water to cover the water bill on the parks we got. And yet we're already voting on facilities that will drain the general fund again when we're not watering the parks. It just doesn't make sense. It's like we got to put a hold on it and cover what we got. Well, what I would do, I would look at privatizing some of the services of the city. Now, I know that's not popular, but a lot of cities that are in the 30 to 70,000 numbers of people are actually looking at outside companies to take care of some of the operations of the city. They found it to be very efficient, they found it to be very economical, and they found that if they're overstaffed, they can easily cut back. If they're understaffed, they can easily add to it, but it's done through the private sector. And they have the team that backs them up to make it work. One of the considerations I would do is look at what we can do to cut costs by privatizing some of our city functions.
Mr. Dane.
Yeah, Greg mentioned the sustainable budget strategy, and that was our approach to the budget problems, and it was successful, maybe a little bit due to luck, because we did get increased gas tax on gasoline, but we also got a new Ford dealer here that's just hitting home runs out of the park too. So it's attracting businesses is part of the solution. But the sustainable budget strategy we had, we did the cutting. We didn't knock out all the grass at all the parks. We converted some to bark. We're encouraging residents to do the same thing because of water conservation and those kind of things. But the other part of the sustainable budget strategy was to find out exactly what our citizens wanted and how they were willing to pay for them. And that we started with something called the community conversations to try to define that. And I want to take that forward. I really want to understand if the citizens, as a lot of the candidates are saying, public safety is number one priority, and it is. It's 78% of our discretionary general fund budget, so it is the number one priority. I want to find out what we need, what they would be willing to pay for to get increased safety services. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Borrello?
Okay, we've heard from a few of the current council members that public safety is priority number one. So over the last 8 years, that's been pretty clear since we've been building all these recreational facilities, and now we're running, it was costing us like $500,000 a year to maintain some of these, some big number like that. It was close to $500,000. Also, going back to attracting new businesses, our office I work for, South County Realty, is the office that attracted Trader Joe's. We work directly with the landowner to negotiate the lease. We also work directly with the gentleman Tim Paulus with the Ford store. So I understand how to attract new businesses. Our office has done it. My chairman, John Telfer, of my committee, is working hand in hand with me. So we know how to bring new businesses to town. We know how to make sales tax for the city. We've proven it. We've got what you want. The Trader Joe's, everyone's very excited about that. Let's see. I also agree with Dennis. Privatization of some of these facilities would be an excellent idea. We're in direct competition with some of our local businesses. 24-Hour Fitness is in direct competition now with the Centennial Center. Why is the public involved? Why is the public involved in a private enterprise? I think it's crazy.
Mr. Turvilla.
Okay, 1 minute. I couldn't agree more with Dennis that the parks not being watered does not fit with the lifestyle of a city flush with money. There's nothing worse than taking my kids to a park and they can't go on certain sections because it's browned out. So I guess I have to take umbrage with the fact that the budget strategy is working well. In my house, we make a certain amount of money. We can't spend any more than that. It's really pretty simple. We save some of it for a rainy day, we invest a little bit of it, and we live on the rest. The city needs to work the same way. And we all have a number of issues that we'd like to have the city pay for. It'd be great if the aquatic center was free to every resident. That's financially not practical yet. I'd like to find a way to make it be so, but I'm not sure what we're willing to give up on to do that. How do we deal with the budget gaps? A, we have to make sure it's balanced plus 10%. B, I think we can save some money on various services by acting not privately, but regionally, sharing fire services with San Martin and South San Jose, or possibly with Gilroy. Some other public, primarily infrastructure services, we may be able to gain some level of savings by having a certain resource flexibly work in different areas of the county.
Thank you. Before we go on, as far as, let me address the students who are here. We're going to 8:30 tonight. If you need to leave now, you've done your hour. If you
Can I answer my question
They do have
first
homework.
before they leave?
If you need to leave now, there'll be AAUW members stationed
should
back
wait
by
for
the door
Marvin.
who can sign your papers.
Do you think I could answer my question before they leave so they can get all of our questions? Yeah, I see that. Okay.
don't we
The
let-
city manager in our council orientation described Morgan Hill as a corporation, and the immediate thought that came to mind was any corporation that ran deficits for several years would be out of business. And I don't want to see that happen in Morgan Hill. Now, in tough times, you have to make tough decisions. I like all the recreation facilities. I love them. I bring my daughter there all the time. But in tough times, when you don't have the money to pay for everything, you've got to go to the first things first. And the first thing government's supposed to do is take care of the public safety of their citizens and the infrastructure of their citizens. And I, for one, if I'm on the council, I will make the tough choice to do that, because that's first and foremost. We are not keeping up with our number of police as far as safety numbers. There's a certain ratio per 1,000 population. A considered safety level is 1.5. We have 0.94. And the first thing I would do and make a priority is to put more police on the force, because we've been lucky so far that we don't have a crime problem in Morgan Hill, but the population here is growing. And if we don't do something to increase the police officers, we're going to have a problem. Thank you.
Mr. Kennett.
For certain things you can consolidate regionally, there's certain things you can
I
hire
know,
out.
it was.
Police isn't one of them. Police needs to stay in-house. The fact is, Morgan Hill really doesn't know where its next nickel is coming from. If Ford sales tank and gas prices fall, we're right back to that $1.5 million a year deficit where we were. We need to grab our own destiny. We need to, for instance, hire an economic development professional in this town, something that, for whatever reason, we've refused to do. I'd like to see it happen. This is a person who can help develop our community per our vision, much like Gilroy did with their vision. Look what they did in the last 15 years. I don't want to be Gilroy, but it would be our version of economic development. Take, for instance, car dealerships. We could have car dealerships that reflect Morgan Hill. Maybe not another Chevy, maybe not a Toyota dealership, but a Lexus. Whatever it is we want. We'll listen to our people to make Morgan Hill the way it is, but we need professional help to do it.
Thank you. Okay, business. Morgan Hill has long had a reputation for being business unfriendly. Is this justified or not? If you think it is justified, how would you change it? Also, what kind of businesses specifically, besides what Mr. Kennett has just mentioned, do you think would work in Morgan Hill? Where should they go? And shall we talk about more car dealerships? I see Trader Joe's is going where the car dealerships were, so going to go. Who's
It's me.
starting? You are
I think it's me.
starting.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we have to seriously address that issue, because as Morgan Hill being a non-business-friendly community, whether it's true or not, it's perceived to be true. And as long as they perceive it to be true, it's true in their eyes. And good businesses, we don't want them to leave. I mean, if it benefits them, it definitely benefits our citizens to have what they want to have. Why should we run to Gilroy? Why should we run to San Jose? I understand our hometown America, Morgan Hill. I've been here 30 years. We watched the city grow. We raised our kids here. Sharon and I personally decided this is where we're going to live the rest of our life. So we're not looking for anywhere else. We want our Morgan Hill. But I also understand that if you need your car fixed, if you need to go buy shoes, if you need to get some tenant, you need to buy certain things, why not try to buy them in town here? So let's find out what the problem is, and part of it is our bureaucracy, part of it is attitude, part of it is procedure, part of it is ordinances. Let's change what's changeable, fix what's fixable, and then try to give the image up.
Mr. Tate?
Yeah, we have two policies, and they're kind of very much competing policies. The council has a policy that we want to recover all our costs, and we also have a policy that we want to attract a lot of business to town. So you think about those two things, and how do you balance them, and how do you make them work together? And it's a very much a balancing act. We do have a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce where a certain set of business inhibitors have been identified. We work through those. We're doing a good job, I think, of addressing them, not defensively. The two sides are working together to find compromises. What works and where does it go? I think we've got a great plan with the DiNapoli-Broman Center being built out at the northwest corner of Cochrane and the freeway, where we're going to get a Circuit City and a Staples and all those kinds of things that people go down to Gilroy or up to San Jose to buy. They can now go to that center to buy. If they want the boutique kind of shops, they can come downtown. So I think we're on the right track there, and I think we can attract a couple more car dealerships as well, and I'd like to see that happen, probably on the east side of the freeway rather than the west.
Mr. Varela?
I believe that with the DiNapoli side, our opportunity to purchase goods here in Morgan Hill is going to definitely increase, and I'm very excited about that project. I attended a workshop at the Planning Commission, I think about a week and a half ago, and what was there was a community of people who are developers, business owners, and what everybody had to say to the Planning Commission at the workshop was the fact that Morgan Hill is unfriendly towards businesses. I tend to agree with that because a number of businesses, if they want to change a facade or do another use, there's outrageous permit fees and overview fees and just fees everywhere. And no one likes paying fees, okay? It slows everything down, plus the review process is slowing everything down. So one of those economic inhibitors, we need to speed up the process to make the people who own these buildings be able to lease to these people in a timely manner, because no one can hold a property for 2-3 months waiting for someone to get their approval. So we need to streamline some stuff. I believe the freeway is an excellent site to do some more commercial developments, like tenant property would be an excellent site. Conduit would be an excellent place to add new dealerships. It's been great for increasing our revenues for the city. And let's see. Yep, more dealerships would be good in Conduit. So increase tax.
Everybody gets excited about more car dealerships because cars are big ticket items, big money, big sales tax into the coffers, and you can't really argue with that financially. I don't know that I'd like to see the entire freeway coated with car dealerships, so I think we have to have some thought on how we do that. Other kinds of businesses in town, as I mentioned earlier, I'd love a family-friendly place to take my kids where I can play pool and they can play with around with the blocks and the toys and maybe video games as they get a little bit older. I'm a gamer, so I'd love to see a game shop where people can get together and play board games, play cards, have a drink. More restaurants, of course, places to listen to live music. 2 or 3 or 4 of those would be really fantastic and develop kind of a music scene. I was really surprised a while back, I moved to Minneapolis and learned that Minneapolis has the second largest number of live jazz performances per evening to New Orleans in the country. And so you can go and you can find live jazz any night of the week somewhere in Minneapolis. We should find some niche like that, be it jazz or country or whatever floats our boat. But there's certainly an opportunity for live music that doesn't exist yet.
Is that an unbridge?
It could be a bridge. Certainly, I would love to see a concert hall.
Hey, would there be any more cell phones that are still on out there? Ms. Lee.
Is Morgan Hill an unfriendly town to business? The perception has been that yes, it has been. The council is contending it's becoming more business friendly, but on Saturday, out and about in town, I talked to a gentleman who said he couldn't start his business here because he got a bill when going through the process for $100,000 in traffic impact fees. And he said, not a chance. I can't do that. I've got already the cost of starting the business. This is on top of everything. I can't do that. We have got to do something about the fees involved in starting a business here. And again, my plan is take this RDA money, use it for economic development in town, offsetting EIR fees, offsetting impact fees, using them to do the planned unit developments, using it to take the money and do a whole downtown EIR, help speed up the whole process for anyone wanting to do in downtown or anywhere else, So we get business in here faster, and we get the sales tax money in here faster. Thank you.
Mr. Kennett.
Yes, we have mitigation fees, we have impact fees, and it really is quite a bit of what keeps the city solvent when the city can be solvent. Our fees are higher than some, lower than others, but they're about par for the community. Nobody likes to pay them. That's the reality. I think what we can do a better job of is mitigating some of those fees. I think, no deal's a good deal unless it's a good deal for all involved. So we need to mitigate some of those fees and make it easier for people to come into town. I would like to see the attitude change. It's improved. It's improved somewhat over the 6 years that I've been involved with the Economic Development Committee. It needs to improve better. Sometimes the attitude is still here. It's our way or the highway, and lo and behold, they take the highway, and that's not good for Morgan Hill. We need to adjust that.
Mr. Sellers.
Thank you, Carol. It's exciting. A lot of these answers are things that we're already doing, so it's exciting to hear that there's a lot of, that everybody's feeling the same thing. There's a couple of things that we've done in the last 2 years that have made a big difference in terms of making it more business friendly. One of them is I fought for several years, and this year we hired a planner that is doing nothing but business projects. That gives them a focus on the kind of business that we want to bring into this community. It's helped a lot with the DeNapoli project and with some other projects. The second thing, I do support dealerships, 3 dealerships, not more than that, next to the Ford dealer. I don't support dealerships on the other side of the freeway. We need to cluster those, and we don't need an auto mall like other communities have attracted. And third, I think it's important that we keep in mind that it's not just business, it's the kind of business, as I've said earlier. One of the things that's made our property values high and that has made Morgan Hill such a great community for people like Al who say, yeah, this is where I want to live, is that we've maintained high standards. We have standards in place, and we need to maintain those so that we continue to have the high quality of life but attract new businesses that will enhance that further. Thank you.
Okay. We have a question from the audience. Most of the other questions have been folded into the ones we've already asked. If you'll forgive a tiny editorial comment, this next question is going to drive the current council nuts. St. Louis and Kaiser have limited facilities in Gilroy, and Kaiser Santa Teresa is 20 miles away and hemmed in. What would you do as a council person or mayor to attract a first-class hospital to Morgan Hill? Shall we start with Mr. Tate? I believe that is your question, yes. Sorry.
Well, the hospital that is here cannot really be revived. It's really just too down level in terms of technology. And in my view, I don't think we really can get a hospital here. But I think the way the medical technology is going, we can get, there's a lot more outpatient surgery being done and those kind of things. So we need some of those outpatient surgery clinics and so forth. A lot has been said just recently about bringing business to town and the high impact fees. That is one of the inhibitors definitely, and I think for medical, we need to look at that. Our impact fees should be relieved for medical people trying to come to town. We need to do more. We put a lot of money into the medical foundation, the Morgan Hill Medical Foundation, and expected them to lead the way in attracting additional doctors and clinics and those kinds of things to town. We need to keep working with them to make that happen and maybe remove some of the inhibitors to help it happen. I don't see much hope of really getting a full-scale hospital, but I think we need those kinds of facilities in much more quantity here.
Mr. Barillo, Medical Services.
I think a lot of what happens in communities such as ours, that are a little bit smaller communities, are affected by what happens regionally. I think when Coyote Valley, whenever it does develop, or if it does, that'll be the time we'll be in the position to actually have a full-service hospital in the city. Another way to, if that didn't work out, I'd say the other way to be able to attract them would be, I think we gave like $11 million in RDA funds or some type of funds to the DeNapoli project to lure them here. If we could do something like that with the hospital to get the hospital here, if that's something that the city feels that we really need, then that's something I would investigate and look into. If it works to attract the DeNapoli, they're going to have a bunch of sales tax dollars here, which is great. It might do the same effect for the city with the hospital. So to get them here, I think we'd have to make some type of concession to get them here. Thanks.
I don't believe that we're big enough yet to support a full-scale hospital. I'm pretty sure that's the reason the one that was here closed a few years before I got here. I think we can. We talked about niche things we can do. I think we can focus on a high-quality urgent care or trauma center. that'll deal with the emergency needs. We certainly should get a little more friendly and have a few more doctors in town. A little more competition and choice would be good for all of us. But I don't think we can support a full-scale hospital. I would like to find a way to do an urgent care center, though, because driving 20 minutes to wherever you need to go when it's urgent is more than annoying, and we should fix that.
Ms. Lee?
I'm lucky enough to have a doctor who's on the medical board down at St. Louis, and basically said we can't afford to have 2 hospitals here in the area. There's not enough people, there's not enough dollars in it, and let's face it, healthcare now is a business. Even the fact now St. Louis Regional down in Gilroy is not, they're not making a lot of money, if any. So we just don't have the population here to do that. Yes, it would be great to have that, and I'm in full support of getting more doctors and different types of doctors here in the area. But the number of people here can't support it. I'm all for getting urgent care and medical services here, but a full-scale hospital I don't think we can afford here.
Mr. Kennett?
What this community needs is a well-run emergency room, and then build from that. If the hospital comes, it comes. As the community grows, then it'll support a hospital. But until such time, we have plenty of hospitals around us. But before you can get to the hospital for the stay, you have to go through the emergency room if that's what you need, and that needs to be right here in River City.
Mr. Sellers?
Thank you, Carol. I was the last one to arrive this evening because I came directly from the Morgan Hill Community Health Foundation board meeting. And they are working very hard. We helped to start that organization because we thought it was important to have a nonprofit in place that would dedicate themselves to continuing health care facilities. A couple of things that they mentioned I wanted to pass on. One is they have a website, everybody does, morganhillhealth.org, which lists all the doctors in town. And I would encourage everyone to look at that the site and see if there are doctors that we can work with. The old St. Louis Hospital facility currently has a lot of doctors. It's about 80% actually of the medical building that's filled already with doctors. We need to do more like that. We need to add other facilities. And I also think that we can creatively reuse that building for medical-related services. Not only urgent care and more emergency services, as some folks have pointed out, but ancillary services, specialty surgery, children's health. We have the highest percentage of young families in the entire region, would be a natural. So those are some things I want to work with the foundation to enhance and develop in the next few years.
Thank you. Mr.
Yeah,
Dwyer?
I agree with everybody on the panel that you can't, the one thing we keep in perspective, though, is we have 2 great freeways going either way. There are some hospitals that are closer, but the sheer, not the distance, just the geographics to get to it are longer than hopping on a freeway and buzzing down for 20 minutes. I know it's frustrating, but it actually is pretty good. We're not really a destitute area on the health care. But I think an acute center, as Steve was talking about, in the emergency room, is a wonderful way to offset what those hospitals are offering.
Okay, we have, each candidate will have 1 minute to wrap up and tell us all those notes you've been taking all evening. Let's start with Mr. Borrello.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I really had a great time. This is my second debate ever. Even though I'm a political science student, so you'd think I'd do it a lot more than that. But like the first one, I've had a really good time conversing with everybody and hearing the different opinions and different ideas. And I think everyone is a group of very smart people, and we're all looking out for Morgan Hill. We wouldn't be up here if we weren't. Getting back to me, for voting for me, I really believe that I am the next generation leadership in Morgan Hill. I'm the youngest person on the panel. I'm the most excited, in my opinion. I really want to make a change for the positive for Morgan Hill. I can see Morgan Hill being a place when we have kids, my wife and I, where we actually will have somewhere to take them. I lived here my whole life, and there's never been anything to do, and everyone's always complained about that. I believe it can make Morgan Hill just a fantastic place to live. Don't leave. Vote for me if you really want to see some change, okay? I'll be available to listen to people, too. So thank you very much, and vote for me. I'll put Morgan Hill first. So thanks a lot.
Mr. Tervalan.
Thanks again for everyone for attending and having a few laughs. I am also a rookie politician. This is my first ever run for office anywhere, so I've thoroughly enjoyed interchanging ideas with these 6 people. I think what you get with me is substance over style. I'm very much of a down-to-earth, collaborative, critical thinker. Issues and ideas are what count with me. I'm not much for image. I'm not much for flash, but I am much for solving problems the right way once. so that we don't have to revisit them over and over and over again. So that, more than anything else, is what I bring to the table. Chris mentioned he's the youngest. I can give him a debate on energy level. I'm an insomniac, so I'm just at the beginning of my day after a work day. And energy level doesn't lack here. For me, I have an interest in staying here long-term. Well, we've decided we want to stick around here. We want our kids to grow up here. We want to stay and want to find a way to do that. So I'm committed to helping the community and growing it, and I'd like to be a part of that in a leadership position, so I'd appreciate your vote in 3.5 weeks.
Ms. Lee.
Once again, I'd like to thank AAUW and the Morgan Hill Times for sponsoring this event tonight. I'd like to thank all the other council and mayor candidates for coming here tonight. For more information on how I stand on all the issues facing Morgan Hill, my answers to the questions the Chamber of Commerce asked in their forum, and also the Morgan Hill Times asked, and learn more about my background, please visit www.marbylee.com. To me, the upcoming election is truly a referendum on the future of Morgan Hill. If you want to keep building projects that we're not sure we can afford to operate and maintain, then I'm not your candidate. If you want a council member who will be a good steward of the public's tax dollars, who wants to make sure we have the appropriate levels of police on the force, and who's willing to say no to projects that we haven't yet figured out how to pay for, then I am your candidate for Morgan Hill City Council. Thank you all for taking the time to get involved, and I'd appreciate your vote for me, Marby Lee, on November 7th. Thank you.
Mr. Kennett.
Hi, I have a visual aid, and I don't know how well that can be seen, but this is what I stand for: common sense for City Council. Sense, services, public safety must grow with Morgan Hill. E, environmental sensitivity, retain the quality of life that is Morgan Hill. N, nice user-friendly government, promote transparency of government. S, sensible fiscal responsibility, build things we can sustain and manage. And E, economic development, allow Morgan Hill to pay for itself. We have a wonderful place here. We all agree on that. How it's going to be managed and how it's going to grow from now on is very critical. This is a key time in our history. I look forward to being part of that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Sellers.
Thank you,
1
and
minute.
welcome back, Carol. I didn't say that earlier. I
I'm leaving
appreciate
tomorrow.
seeing you here. So, glad to see you here this evening. It's been a great 8 years in Morgan Hill. The city I grew up in and have always loved to be in has done some amazing things. We've built more public facilities, and we've increased our police force, as I mentioned before, and we've also enhanced our finances, and have proven long-term that we know how to pay for those facilities. A young, growing community like ours deserves to have adequate recreation facilities. We're opening our new recreation center at the end of this month. I encourage you all to join us on the October 28th to look at the beautiful new facility. And we know how we're going to pay for that long-term by balancing our needs. We already have the highest return in our recreation center of any city in the region, and I'm looking forward to making that even higher. So I want to continue to work on the council with the great team that we've had to continue the collaborative process and continue to build on what we've already built to make Morgan Hill, which is already a good city, into a truly great city for those of us who live here and raise our families. Thank you.
The 5 people you have just heard are your candidates for City Council. You may choose 2 among the 5. Our final 2 candidates are vying against each other for the single mayoral position. So your new mayor is one of these 2 gentlemen. Let us start with Mr. Delisle.
Okay, the long-term funding, I understand what the council is talking about, but having reserves is, what happens if there's an emergency? We live on a fault line up here, the San Andreas Fault. What happens if there's an emergency? Without reserves, you don't have long-term planning. You have to have them now. Would recommend you go to my website. It's the first time I announce it, Dennis for Mayor. That's dennisformayor.com. And it really boils down to, between Steve and I'm for a new direction, and Steve's for the status quo. So the individual voters will just have to make up their minds if they're happy with the way things are going, or if they'd like to put a new direction. And it basically boils down to us 2 choices, because your choice not to vote is not a choice. So you have to vote for one of us. I'd like your vote. I'd like to try to see what we could do. Okay.
Mr. Tate.
Thank you. I think everybody on this panel tonight loves our community, and I'm just really happy to know that everybody's doing this for the right reason. You all have great answers to the questions, and I really respect everybody here. It's been a great experience getting to know you. You know, in my mind, Dennis and I are not differentiated because he wants change and I don't. I think the main differentiation between us is qualification. I started out with my homeowners association at Holiday Lake Estate back in the early 80s and worked my way up to getting involved with the general plan update, and went from there to 2 terms on the planning commission, and from there to 2 terms on the city council. And I've been not just involved in the government side of things, I've been very involved in the nonprofit side of things. My heart and soul is in this community, and I've invested a lot into it, and I think I have the capability to lead it. So I would appreciate your vote, and I encourage you to go to www.mayortate.org. Thank you.
Good job.
The suggestion for the Unbridge is an international marketplace based on the relationships with one of our 3 sister cities. Is it 3? 4. 4 now?
4.
Wow. Okay, 4. Well, my goodness, you're really busy. Well, we are out of time. I hope you all now have a better idea of who these candidates are and a better idea of the issues also. I want to thank the candidates, AAUW, the Morgan Hill Times, Channel 17, and the City of Morgan Hill, in whose chambers we are sitting, for engaging in this critical part of democracy. If you need, as we said before, if you need more unbiased information or links to these fine people, go to www.smartvoter.org. It really does have a lot for you. And it's very accessible. It's easy, even if you are not really comfortable with computers, it's pretty easy to get around on. A second forum will be held same time, same place tomorrow, next Monday night, sponsored by the same folks, AAUW and Morgan Hill Times, but this time it will be all the candidates for the school board, which is a whole different kettle of fish. And Election Day, of course, is Tuesday, November 7th. Do not forget to vote. I want to wish the best of luck to every one of these very strong candidates. I really enjoyed tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good night.